Schönen guten Tag. Ich darf Sie sehr herzlich begrüßen zur Pressekonferenz von Außenministerin Baerbock mit ihrem indischen Amtskollegen Dr. Jaishankar. Es wird danach die Gelegenheit für einige wenige Fragen geben. Ich darf Sie bitten, entsprechend sich in Ihrer Fragen kurz zu halten, weil wir etwas unter zeitlichem Druck stehen. Frau Außenministerin, Sie haben das Wort.
Einen schönen guten Tag auch von meiner Seite. Lieber Herr Kollege, lieber Jai, auch hier noch einmal herzlich willkommen in Berlin. Nach der Münchner Sicherheitskonferenz bereits das zweite Mal dieses Jahr deinerseits in Deutschland. Und das ist ganz und gar kein Zufall, denn zwischen unseren Demokratien besteht ein enges Band, das angesichts der zahllosen internationalen Herausforderungen für beide Länder und ihre Menschen von herausragender Bedeutung ist. Dieses Band wird insbesondere von so vielen Menschen, von Braunschweig bis Bangalore, von Magdeburg bis Mumbai, an so vielen Orten getragen. Man kann sagen, tagtäglich ist dieses Band immer dichter geworden. Vor knapp 2 Jahren haben wir bei dir in Delhi eine Migrations- und Mobilitätspartnerschaft unterzeichnet, die den Austausch erleichtert und ganz konkret die Lebenspläne von Fachkräften, Studierenden und Auszubildenden unterstützt. Waren damals bei meinem Besuch vor knapp 2 Jahren noch Waschkörbe voll von Visa-Anträgen und lange Wartezeiten das gängige Bild auch bei uns in der Botschaft, im Konsulat, so blicken wir schon jetzt auf eine echte gemeinsame Erfolgsgeschichte. Die Zahlen sprechen für sich. Mit knapp 50.000 jungen Menschen sind Inderinnen inzwischen die größte Gruppe ausländischer Studierender an deutschen Universitäten. Der Fachkräftezuwachs ist mit einem Plus von 25% in diesen 2 Jahren gewaltig. Dabei sind Visa-Digitalisierung und Visa-Beschleunigung die Basis, dass dies gelingen konnte und weiter gelingt. Und sie sind daher ein Kernstück unserer Arbeit hier im Auswärtigen Amt in den letzten 3 Jahren. Indien ist da eins unserer Paradebeispiele, aber die Visa-Digitalisierung, der Umbau unseres kompletten Visasystems zur Beschleunigung, das wird hier mehr als deutlich. Weil wir Fachkräfte brauchen, und zwar weltweit, nicht nur mit Blick auf Indien. Denn diese klugen Köpfe, flinken Hände, gepaart mit Innovationskraft, braucht es, volkswirtschaftlich und wirtschaftlich erfolgreich zu sein. 400.000 Fachkräfte jährlich brauchen wir in Deutschland.
Is what we need for Germany every year. And already now, Germany has become India's most important trading partner in the EU. And there is still huge additional potential that we would like to tap.
Zwischen unseren Volkswirtschaften wollen wir daher
We therefore want to further strengthen trade and investment between our two economies, especially with regard to a trade agreement. We want to make it clear that not only cooperation between countries and economic regions is important, but also between strong democracies and strong economic powers are an added value to both sides and also an added value to the world.
Wir wollen dabei auch, dass deutsche Investoren und Firmen leichter in Indien Fuß fassen können.
To make it easier for German investors and companies to settle down in India, and there is huge interest in expanding economic ties. We could see that very clearly when we looked at the crammed Weltsaal, the hall where we gathered for the traditional business day of our ambassadors conference in Berlin.
Und es braucht vermutlich keine hellseherischen Fähigkeiten
I think you do not need a crystal ball to assume that the Asia-Pacific Conference of the German economy in October in Delhi will be bursting at the seams, because of course it is part of our security strategy as well and a part of our diversification strategy. In this sense, I could not imagine a better stage for India to present itself to the German business community as as a reliable partner for the future. And this is what it is about, reliable partnership, also in the 50th year of German-Indian cooperation in the field of science and technology. Looking at technologies for the future together, especially green technologies, always in the understanding that all new technologies, of course, are relevant to our security as well. Together, we will be able to address the most urgent challenges of our time. First and foremost, the protection of our climate. We want to further expand our partnership for green and sustainable development and deepen our dialogue on the protection of our climate, especially with regard to the climate conference COP29 this autumn. It will be important that we also bolster financially the climate protection, meaning that we share the burden among more stakeholders and tap new financial sources. An Indian leadership role, and I mean political support here, would make an important contribution, and I'm grateful for what you have launched at the G20 meeting. And now Brazil has the presidency of the G20. This will be strongly rooted at the COP as well. And this big important topic of climate change is, of course, of greatest relevance, but also beyond. India, as the biggest democracy and a rising economic power, India plays an important role, is a role model for many other countries. So the political position India takes also has impacts on others. India, therefore, also has a lot of clout as a security policy actor in its own region and also in other strategically important world regions. Here as well, we share the joint goal of maintaining the rules-based international order and free maritime navigation, free trade passages also in the Indo-Pacific. The Bundeswehr is highlighting this once again through its presence in the Indo-Pacific. For the first time, our Air Force took part in Tarang Shakti in August, a big exercise of the Indian Armed Forces. And in October, there is a planned port visit and an exercise of the German and the Indian Navy. All these are symbols of our closeness, also in global questions when it comes to preserving peace and security. And it is important for me to say that because we have this common goal, preserving peace and security, preserving the rules-based international order, this does not mean that you have to agree on everything at all times, but it means that when you have different opinions on things, that you engage in discussion, and that's what we are doing. And we've been doing that also for more than 2 years with regard to the huge security policy challenge, the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine, that is, of course, very close to us here in Europe. It is important that we reach out to one another and that we make each other offers. Prime Minister Modi's visit to Kiev was an important signal. Indian support to President Zelensky's peace plan would have our full support, and of course that there are channels to Russia as well that you have due to your long-standing neighborly relations. This is what we have also discussed today. Dear Jai, we could have continued our exchange today in much more detail, not only with regard to economic questions or political issues, bilateral topics, and many more, because there are, of course, so many challenges, but also so many opportunities, and we want to pull in one direction. I'm delighted that we will have another opportunity to talk in only a few weeks' time. In 2 weeks already, Anga will take place in New York, the United Nations General Assembly, and at the end of October, we will have German-Indian intergovernmental consultations that will be another important element of the German-Indian relations that are becoming ever closer. And both our ministries have engaged in a lot of preparatory work because we want to sign many meaningful agreements. Thank you very much for your visit today, and thank you for the excellent preparation and cooperation when it comes to the German-Indian intergovernmental consultations.
Minister.
Thank you. Let me begin by saying I'm really very pleased to meet you all at the conclusion of my discussions with Foreign Minister Baerbock, Annalena. As the Minister noted, this is my second visit this year to Germany. I came here earlier for the Munich Security Conference. Now, you all know that we have recently completed our general elections in India. After 60 years, our government has received a third successive mandate. Because of that continuity, we are actually ready to go from day one. Prime Minister Modi asked all his ministers to plan and execute a 100-day program. As Foreign Minister, for me, that meant meeting key partners on a priority basis. That is why I'm here today. Foreign Minister Baerbock and I had a good discussion on the state of the world. It is always, for me certainly, valuable to get directly the German perspective. I hope my own was equally useful to her. Our conversation touched on many subjects, some of them quite obvious, and Annalena spoke about it. We discussed Prime Minister Modi's recent visit to Ukraine. We talked about the situation in West Asia, Middle East, especially the Gaza conflict and its ramifications. I am, by the way, just flying in from Saudi Arabia, where I was meeting the Gulf ministers. We also spent some time on the Indo-Pacific and briefly on some things which have been happening in our immediate neighborhood. Later this month, we will be heading to New York for the UN General Assembly. This year, there is a special summit of the future, and Germany is one of the co-facilitators. We naturally discussed global issues and reforming the UN. Do remember, we are both aspiring for a more prominent role in the UN Security Council. I touched briefly on our cooperation with the EU. With the incoming Commission, we hope to move faster on the FTA and other agreements, and we count on Germany's support for that. We also would like to hold an early meeting of the Trade and Technology Council. Now, about the bilateral relationship, again, let me just revert for a moment to the 100-day agenda. At home, that has included a decision to create 12 new industrial zones across the country, initiate a much bigger skilling program, and expand our logistics infrastructure. There is a strong focus on new and emerging technologies, including semiconductors, electric mobility, renewables, etc. We believe that this can constitute new opportunities for India-Germany cooperation. Trade between us is broadly in the range of about $30 billion annually. And I think investments from Germany, I think about $25 billion. It's somewhat less from our side. But what is clear is that there is a vast potential there to be realized. Germany is a crucial partner in accelerating our growth and development. India, in turn, can contribute to building reliable and resilient supply chains, diversified production, and trusted digital partnerships. We welcome the forthcoming Asia-Pacific Conference of German Businesses in New Delhi in October 2024. As India's growth unfolds, we all understandably want it to be cleaner and greener. The Green and Sustainable Development Partnership we agreed upon 2 years ago contributes to that objective. We discussed how that can progress further. We also spoke about our science and technology cooperation, which now marks its 50th year. When Annalena came to India in December 2022, we signed a migration and mobility partnership agreement. This has facilitated a smooth movement of skills and talent, and I was pleased to learn that today there are 125,000 Indian nationals who are working in their professional capacity in Germany. Creating a legal global workplace is in our mutual interest. The number of Indian students in Germany have also grown. Again, I was very happy to get the numbers. It's 50,000, I believe. And I thank you, Minister, personally for your efforts in improving the speed and efficiency of visa issuance in India. Our interactions in defense and security have also increased. We held the first ever air exercises this year, and we hope to welcome your naval ships in Goa next month. Our policy and other exchanges have been mutually beneficial, and we would like to explore how our defense industries can cooperate more closely. Both India and Germany are active internationally in a variety of geographies and programs. We exchange views about how we can work together where possible in third countries. Our consultations, as Minister Baerbock mentioned, precede the impending meeting of the Intergovernmental Consultations in India later this year. I think today's session has been very, very useful to prepare for that. Finally, I was greatly honored to be invited to speak to the Conference of German Ambassadors this morning. I think this in itself is an indication of our mutual desire to forge closer bonds and work together. It was the business day of the conference, and I think the interaction, the questions particularly from the German business community were very, very helpful. I think it was a very good session. I thank you, Minister, for the opportunity and indeed for hosting me so graciously today. Once again, a great pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Vielen Dank, Herr Außenminister und Herr Woche von der Deutschen Regierung.
Many thanks. Richard Wolf from Deutsche Welle. So I have questions with regional relevance for each of you. Perhaps Dr. Jaishankar first, welcome to Berlin. The authorities in Bangladesh say that they will seek extradition of the former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Will India consider such a request? And Frau Ministerin Baerbock, zurzeit laufen Gespräche über Zurückweisungen von Asylsuchenden an den Grenzen. Wie ist Ihre Sicht auf diese Frage? Und gibt es bereits Gespräche mit den betroffenen Nachbarländern wie Österreich, Tschechien oder Frankreich? Danke.
As you know, there's a change of government in Bangladesh, and we obviously deal with the government of the day. How we deal with that is through diplomatic channels, not necessarily through reports which may be reported by the press.
Springen wir einmal, aber da sieht man das auch in herausfordernden Zeiten, natürlich regionale und nationale Themen immer auch Außenministerinnen und Außenminister begleiten. Wir kommen ja hier heute in Deutschland, gerade als Politikerinnen und Politiker, aus einer Feierstunde, unserer Feierstunde zum Grundgesetz, wo so deutlich wurde, dass unser Land so sicher ist und unsere Lebensversicherung ist, aufgrund dieses Grundgesetzes, mit einem zentralen Satz, den Frieden in der Welt verpflichtet, als Glied in einem vereinten Europa zu dienen. Und angesichts dieser emotionalen Zeiten ist es, glaube ich, wichtig, diesen Satz nicht nur in Feierstunden immer wieder in Erinnerung zu rufen, sondern sich immer wieder wirklich daran zu erinnern, bei allem politischen Handeln,
in every political activity we do. This united Europe has been our lifeline for 75 years, and it was especially strong when it was challenged, and we need to be reminded of that. This is true for me today as well, also with the debates that we're seeing nowadays. In these days, we need Democrats that stand united with regard to the attacks we're seeing against our democracy, attacks from the outside and from the inside, Russia's aggression against our European peace order and thus our liberal democracies, also attacks from right-wing extremists and Islamist terrorists. Their goal as well is dividing our liberal democracy. So for me, it is essential that in these moments where our democratic hearts are burning, that we remain sober-minded and that we do not allow others to divide us, neither in the inside, between those who are born here and those who have moved here, and One thing unites us, that we are firmly rooted on the soil, on the fundamentals of our German basic law. That's the basis of our everyday lives. And we will also not be divided as Europeans. So it is very important that as liberal societies, we muster the strength to differentiate, especially when actors from the inside and outside want to divide us. We need to muster the strength to find a European solution and not to engage in solo runs. We need to have the power and the strength to preserve Europe and our free movement within Schengen and to defend it instead of putting it at risk. This is why we pooled our forces to reform the common European asylum system. It required a lot of energy to bring down illegal migration and maintain what protects us, our united Europe, that is also reflected in Schengen, the Schengen system. So I believe that German solo runs, such as an emergency situation, and you addressed this, our neighboring countries were a bit irritated by this, but also the federal states said that this could not work in our situation. Solo runs are not an option because you cannot fight terrorism with hysterical reactions. In Europe, we need to work together to fight terrorism. This is why we made it clear that we need stricter rules where we are really under pressure. We need legally sound European solutions. The ministers of domestic affairs and we, the foreign ministers, put this on track with the common European asylum system. And in cases where the old Dublin directive does not work, but the new rule has not yet been transferred into national law and does not apply yet, we need to find ways of how we can already start taking effective measures under the common European asylum system, take measures at the border. We are doing this in individual cases, and people have already been sent back. We will implement CS together, and we will not only have border controls at external borders, we will have procedures for airports as well. This will play a role for German airports as well, and we need to be able to send people back to other European countries as well. As I am speaking with another foreign minister today, and we talked about the crisis in the world today, with regard to the crises we see in the world and the way we see our society is challenged by autocrats, I would like to ask you one thing. It is, of course, natural that Democrats talk to one another in difficult times and that the government and the opposition talk to one another. If that makes headlines in a democracy, Democrats are talking together, or if there are ultimatums whether a meeting can take place or not, it is truly irritating for myself, but also for our neighbors, because with regard to the situation the world finds itself in, it is where it is so difficult in other places. This is something that is possible here, and I think it should be.
Frau Haider from The Hindu.
Thank you. I'm Suhasini Haider. I'm the diplomatic editor of the Hindu newspaper in India. So thank you for taking my questions. I wanted to ask both the ministers about your conversations on the Russia-Ukraine conflict and how it can be resolved. Further, Chancellor Scholz said yesterday that Russia should be involved in the next peace summit. My question to you, Minister Jaishankar, is will India host the next peace summit on the Russia-Ukraine conflict? Is the government working on a peace proposal of its own, of India's? And Ms. Baerbock, your expectations from India, Mr. Zelensky has said that he wants India to change its attitude towards Russia, to end oil imports from Russia. Is that something you are discussing with the Indian government? What are your expectations? Thank you.
Okay. I would anyway speak in German. You have the translation, yeah?
We, as Europeans, are working together with Ukraine on a daily basis. We're working for peace because Ukraine and we as Europeans want nothing more but this peace. And for the last 2.5 years, and of course we talked about this again and again, what we are doing as Europeans over the last 2.5 years, we have tried every day to come closer to that peace, at least a millimeter. We have made it clear that destroyed water pipes could be repaired without them being destroyed as a first step to build trust. We had 20,000 abducted children, abducted by Russia, and bringing these back would be a first step towards peace. And not only Europeans, but also individual African states have made the case for that. And India and other countries as well reacted when the delivery of crops became a problem. And this grain corridor then became a first step. But unfortunately, every individual step towards peace that we had suggested, that Ukraine had suggested, that the African countries had suggested, that Turkey had suggested, and where also India was involved when it came to grain for the world, Russia responded with more terror and more attacks, which meant more suffering. This does not mean that we are not trying it again and again every day. The Ukrainians want peace, the Europeans want peace, and this is always an intensive discussion also with countries like India and countries from other places in the world. The whole world would be so relieved if finally peace came back to Europe. So of course we spoke about how we in our different roles, what we can do. It is good to have this same foundation that is democracy. We talked about our different roles and how we can contribute to peace, and my Indian colleague will be able to say more about the perspective of the Indian government, of course. As Europeans, we have decided on 14 sanctions packages, also when it comes to energy exports, because we saw that especially through oil and gas exports and other exports as well, the Russian war industry received new revenues. So we talked about this during our past meetings, and of course we also recognize when other countries tell us we understand this or we might not understand this, but you need to understand what it means for us. We need energy. And we talked about this today again when it comes to arms exports, dual-use goods. This is also important in that situation. If a country exports washing machines, it might not be aware of the fact that the chip being used in this washing machine can be used by the Russian army not to do the laundry, but to be used in weapons of war, because they cannot import such goods through the old channels of military goods. So these are things we can discuss, always with the same goal that we have, that we stand for peace in the world, that we want to reach that peace. And from a European perspective, of course, sadly, for 2.5 years, the answer from the Russian president has been, instead of engaging in negotiations, I want to continue destroying you.
Let me, on my part, make a few points. One, Minister Baerbock and I regularly talk about Ukraine. I mean, we are talking this time in person, but from time to time, we also speak on the phone or otherwise. Secondly, in the last 2.5 years, in different ways, India has had some involvement with various specific initiatives, the grain corridor, matters relating to the security of the Zaporozhye nuclear station, and some other discussions. This year, the Prime Minister Modi, went to Russia in July. He went to Ukraine he had actually met President Zelensky in Italy in June. And then he went to Kiev in August. And obviously, both in Moscow and in Kiev, he had fairly detailed, long discussions with the two presidents concerned. A lot of things were said in that discussion. And where our own position is concerned, I think it rests on some postulates. One, that we don't believe that differences and disputes can be settled through war. This is not the era of war. Secondly, we don't believe in this conflict that a solution will come from the battlefield. So we do think that negotiations are the only way forward. At some point, there has to be negotiation. When there is a discussion, we also think it is essential to have Russia in it. Otherwise, the discussions don't, gain further movement. And where India is concerned, I think it's up to what the two parties want. We continuously talk to them. In fact, perhaps you're aware that our national security advisor just went to Moscow in the last few days. So that's really what the state of play is.
Letzte kurze Frage, Herr Kühners, ZDF.
Vielen Dank. Zwei Nachfragen zu dem, was Sie gerade gesagt haben, Frau Ministerin. Russland hat die Einladung zum zweiten Friedensgipfel ausgeschlagen. Mit der
has not accepted the invitation.
Erst vom russischen Gebiet zurückziehen muss. Was wäre Ihre Antwort? Was wäre Ihr Appell an Moskau? Und Herr Minister,
and Minister Jaishankar, another question. Will you be hosting this next peace summit? Are you considering it, or will you at least participate? Thank you for your question, which makes clear once again what several people are suggesting, sadly also in our own country, that Russia had not been invited. This is wrong. They were invited, and we were very quickly told by the Russian government that they were not even considering attending, but they would only come once certain territories, and it was not only the territories where they are illegally occupying parts of Ukraine, but other cities that have not yet been conquered by Russia yet. So this shows that the Russian government at this point in time still has the goal it had on the 24th of February and made clear again and again. They want to destroy Ukraine. For them, it's not about negotiations. They want to destroy Ukraine. And secondly, their attack not only targets Ukraine, but the European peace order. And this is why it is so important to me to discuss this with colleagues from across the world, because, of course, we do not, of course, look at what's happening daily in all parts of the world. But recently we have seen violations of the airspace of Eastern European neighboring countries, EU partners, NATO countries, and pushing border posts, attacks on democratic parties in Europe from Russia. We've seen all of this, and that shows that this is hybrid warfare. So yes, we made it clear, especially with regard to peace talks. Zelensky has extended this invitation, but we must not be naive. This Russian war is waged on many different levels. Neighboring countries such as Moldova also need to be taken into account. So a dictated peace, or what Putin imagines, having a break for arming up again to subjugate the whole of Ukraine or threaten other neighboring countries such as Moldova and others, this needs to be discussed when we talk about peace as well.
Where India is concerned, let me tell you that we took part in this particular exercise starting from Copenhagen up to Bergenstock at various levels, all senior levels. We did not join the communique in Bergenstock for a variety of reasons. Your question about whether we would host this process, suggestions have been made from time to time. But look, let me say this. For us, this is not about a process or about being seen to do something. What is important for us is the reality of the conflict that is taking place today. So if we are always open to any step that is serious, that is impactful, and that is, in our view, a step towards peace.
Vielen herzlichen Dank.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much.
I think we can